I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here. So, hi, I'm Rob. I'm the VP for Mid-Atlantic District for Chapter Support Leadership Training. We've done that already before. Probably most of you have seen me or know me with different hair, maybe. We've already covered that. So here's our combined session, and we just sort of covered, for those that maybe have joined just after I said that, the combined session of President, Secretary, and Treasurer, the intersection of those job descriptions of those jobs, how they interplay, and hand off things, sort of pass the baton as relay runners as you guide your chapters, especially through this year. We had a great session. I'm going to mention, if you didn't catch it, they're all going to be posted in the YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, Mid-Atlantic District Chapter Leadership Training. So it's MAD Chapter Leadership Training is what you can search for. There'll be links that are sent out to that. They've already been sent out. There'll be more. There'll be a connection on the Mid-Atlantic District website to the YouTube channel, but all the materials will be there. All the videos of the sessions will be there. I've already finished processing the first day's videos, the first session's videos. It's been kind of a busy time, but I've got those up. So all of Doug's stuff was there, and then all of Terry Reynolds' stuff is there already. So because this is a Zoom, we've done these marathon Zooms. You guys are used to the drill. It's being recorded. It's already started. If you are not speaking, go ahead and be on mute, and come off of mute when you want to speak. Put yourself back on mute. If you need to step away or do something else that might be unmentionable, on your video, just mute your video, walk away, do what you have to do, would be great. Just adult, sort of rules, courtesy. I know in many of the sessions, we've had actually a very interactive time. And again, this is interactive. So I'll let Richard, Doug, and John direct you to come off of mute, to do what you want to do. Everyone come off of mute, whatever you want. Perfectly fine. They're perfectly capable moderators and can steer the ship. So without that further ado, it's now after 7:05. So I turn this over to, I'm going to turn it over to just order that we did this in, to Doug. So Doug.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the joint session. I'll certainly talk about some of the kinds of things that Rob has talked about in terms of where do we play nicely together and where should we. But knowing that this year has been such an unusual year, I want to walk all three groups through some similar kinds of things that I shared with the presidents. This is obviously not going to be the entire president's class by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's really important that everybody kind of, from a leadership perspective, kind of takes a look at a couple of quick items. And this is the first one. This curve here, you're going to be, if you haven't already, you're going to be experiencing this both personally. You're going to be experiencing this as a team, and your members are as well. And the thing that I called the attention to the president's class is it's not unusual at all to swing back and forth, if you will, in terms of what side of despondent people may hit. Just because, and I throw this out for all of you, just because the last time you talked to somebody 3 or 4 weeks ago, they may have been on top of the world, does not mean that they're on top of the world today. And somebody who had been kind of panicking 3 or 4 weeks ago may be in a different place. And so I'm going to ask you that when you have conversations with people, be aware that they could be any place along this curve. And I think that's going to be one of the pieces that we need to take into consideration leading this year as opposed to other years in our barbershop history. There's something that's called allostatic load. And allostatic load literally refers to the amount of mental and physical effects of stress. And even though the good news is, the cavalry's coming in terms of vaccines, the fact that people are really anxious in terms of, man, is it going to work for me? When do I get it? When is everybody else going to get it? How does this change the rules of the game? I think we just need to be all smart enough to take all of that into consideration when we're talking with people and when we're doing our plans. And both personally as well as organizationally, family, friends, you name it, Symptoms of allostatic load can include, forgetfulness, mind fog, apathy. People that used to be like right up there at the front of the pack. Anytime we needed to get something done, somebody is, yeah, if somebody's got feedback going through, you're listening down a phone and your computer simultaneously in all chances. So if you haven't yet muted, if you'll please do that.
He fixed it.
So, again, people can kind of go in and out of this, and to me, forewarned is forearmed. New reality that for this year, even more than most, we're going to be dealing with a constantly varying set of facts and circumstances. And it's really going to impact the way we both run and manage our chapter, and that is certainly going to be true for the core team at the top of the house. One of the misnomers is it's the job of executives to predict the future, and that can really create, in some cases, more harm than good. So your value as a top team is not in terms of predicting the future. It's really creating and framing what questions do we need to think through. And that's certainly going to be true of the way I've been asking people to kind of orchestrate their board this year versus in times past. Knowing that this is going to be a different year, have you given any thought to how do you want to structure yourself, in terms of, do you need different people in different positions in order to really kind of get our mind wrapped around how we're going to innovate versus how we may have done that in previous years. One of the critical pieces is always, hey, can we talk about chapter conditions without taking it personally? I'm a big believer of wherever you are, you are. It doesn't matter so much how you got here, but let's stay grounded in reality and say, what do we need to do to be able to move this thing forward? The first rule of holes is when you're in one, quit digging. In some cases, we may have to come up with a new way of solving the problem. Doing more of the same is probably not the right answer. Why does any organization exist? It's really to make a profit. How does that translate into what we do? It's really to attract and maintain satisfied members and patrons. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will be talking about patrons again. But it's all about making sure that you have adequate resources today. And I'm going to ask you to not just think money, but everything that's involved in the resources bucket, and improved resources in the future. And I really see that as a critical function of a well-functioning board to be able to kind of speak to those things. From one of my favorite books, Fail-Safe Leadership, a leader is a person who sets goals and achieves results. And it's all about following the processes that lead to your desired outcomes. The beauty of that is every single person in your chapter can now be a leader. And what are you doing to be able to encourage more and to build more going forward into 2021? For anybody who has any kind of subgroups or committees that you're going to be managing, this graphic here is when somebody first comes into an organization and they don't know their job, they don't know what they don't know, they're going to start down here in quadrant 1. Because they're going to bring their own level of excitement, they're not going to need a lot of support from you, but they are going to need direction. And so in that particular case, kind of do this and taking it step by step is critical, and our role is going to be that of director. As they start to do things, and it doesn't always go smoothly, but they still don't know how, they don't have mastery yet in terms of, God bless you. That's when our role is going to go to become more of a coach. We still need to be able to provide, this is how it's done, but mentally we're going to have to be there as a support mechanism. When we cross the midline, this is typically when people are working things that they can do. They've got the competency. Quadrant 3 is more of, for whatever reason, maybe they're going through some allostatic load or some pressure, some stress, but they're no longer as willing to do what they used to do, even though they can. That's when our role has to be much more of a supporter function. And last but not least, when somebody knows how to do something and they're willing and able to do it and they can do it in their sleep, that's when we can really take on the role of delegator. Because they don't need any direction from us, and quite candidly, they don't need that much support from us either. So over the course of time, I watch a lot of people kind of flip-flop between micromanager from hell and total abdication of responsibility, just go figure it out. But I'm sharing this with all of you because there are some middle ground here, and these are quadrants 2 and 3. But the critical element here is, you'll notice I've made a point of up here in the upper corner of talking about this is always, 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 always done by the task and not by the person. I noticed Steve Stajeski is on the line with this, and I happen to know that Steve is a pretty good treasurer because he and I've taught this joint course more than once. Now, what's interesting is that I could say to Steve, I mean, who's got amazing competence on all kinds of levels, I could say, hey, go do something. And if he doesn't have any clue in terms of where to get started, even though he brings tremendous overall competence as a human being to the table, on that particular task, I'm going to have to treat him as quadrant 1. If I was talking to him about, hey, what's the best way to set up a chart of accounts? He is so far down here in terms of quadrant 4. He can do it. He's willing to do it. He knows how to do it. All I'd have to say is, hey, Steve, we need a chart of accounts. Is there any reason why you can't have this done by Friday afternoon at 2? And he'll say no, and we're off to the races. But again, it's always done by the task, never, 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 never by the person. So when it comes to people, just always keep in mind that there's a huge difference between getting people involved and really getting them committed. And years ago, somebody asked me to always remember a bacon and egg breakfast. And that's the chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. There really is a big difference in terms of the level of that people are going to get invested in here. Success, love this definition. It's the continuous achievement of your predetermined goals. So it's not about the striving, it's about the accomplishment. When you're working on your annual goals for you guys as a board, please, please, please make sure that you're setting up yourself to win with goals that you can achieve. Make sure that you give yourself the ability to get the ball across the goal line so that you can celebrate it. Most people are not that willing to run headlong into a concrete wall for the rest of their natural life and never feel like they got anything done. Something to think about: with vision, there's direction. With direction, there's confidence. With confidence, there's urgency. With urgency, there's focus. With focus, there's improvement. With improvement, there's belief. With belief, there's passion. With passion, there's energy. With energy, there's momentum. With momentum, there's cooperation. With cooperation, there's collaboration. And with collaboration, you and all your chapter members all win. So that's the main piece that I just wanted to kind of kick this off with, kind of on a broader scale, if you will. I kind of look at the gap, or the team, if you will, between the CEO, the secretary, and the president. I've talked about that as an executive team more than once, and that was absolutely on purpose. As a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, we still have to do everything like a business. And so if you almost think about it as a CEO, as the president, a COO, chief operating officer, as the secretary, and the CFO, the treasurer, treasury function, as the financial piece. That everything that's really reporting in and of the organization is going to tree up to ultimately one of those three main characters. Um, what are those things that we have oversight responsibility, particularly in the case of the president? We got to make sure that everything, we have to stay on the side of the angels when it comes to all things legal. Whether that be kind of involvement with the society as a whole, Mid-Atlantic District, community, state, and federal guidelines are all the things that ultimately kind of the buck stops with the chapter president. Making sure that all the corporation papers and chartering and everything else that has to be done within the organization is in copyright adherence is all above board. The other thing is for the three functions this year, technically you have a decision to make coming out of tonight's meeting. The three of you combined can say this, we are really going to do something to really have our chapter be spectacular in 2021. Or the three of you can kind of say, you know what, all we really want to try to do is keep the lights on for the next 12 months. And depending on what mindset the three of you have coming out of tonight's meeting will play a huge impact in terms of how successful your chapter is going to be in 2021. So those are some of the main things that I just wanted to set up my piece of the puzzle. At this point, I'm going to turn, unless, let me just kind of open it up. If there's any burning questions, otherwise I think we'd probably be better off holding questions to the end after we've heard from both the secretary and the treasurer. Okie dokie. I think at this point, I think I'm kicking it over to our facilitator for the secretary section. Please pick it up from here.
Okay, thanks, Doug. This is Richard, and I'm going to do the secretary thing. So one of the sharing my screen here. So what I pulled together was some idea of what is it the secretary is supposed to be able to do. And this is kind of an eye chart. There's a lot of words on it, all sorts of things. But basically, the secretary is your point man in the chapter. I've enjoyed it the 5 or 6 years I've been doing secretary work, and it is work. It does need to be done, but because the secretary has permissions for editing the profiles of his chapter members, you're much more in touch with the chapter members than anybody else in the chapter actually is, because the membership is at least on the society website, a member can only edit his own. So although he can see who else is in the chapter, he doesn't get to do much with it. Secretary does a lot with it, and because of that, you need to be careful what you're doing. So one of the things, of course, in the new member center, which I'm learning, you can't hurt yourself. So I would say go in there and take a swing at it. Click on everything that looks like it's a link just to see what's in there, what's going on. They still haven't updated the secretary's manual yet. It still is 2017, but I'm sure they'll get around to it and fix it up, you know, when they get the time. So one of the things that came out of my chapter experience is a lot of times I'll get pushback from members and the music director. Why do we have to get all of these licenses and stuff? And how come they're only good for a year? Hey, I didn't make the laws, but we do have to follow them. And then it's whoever is going to check on it. I mean, nobody's going to check on this. Why don't you just get it done or something, you know, ignore the thing. Okay, yes, you can also speed down the highway and most of the time get away with it. But if you do get caught, penalties can be rather stiff. So as secretary, you got to hold your ground. sometimes and tell them, nope, this is what we have to do. Part of our job is staying legal and keeping you guys out of jail. Will they ever go to jail if they don't? I don't think so, but that's a good scare tactic. I mean, I like to use it all the time. But so secretary, yeah, that's, let me see if I can go down. So here it is. You are a voting board member. So somebody else makes the motion, you can second, or you can make the motion yourself. That's okay. I just make sure that you're good. We've in Cherry Hill, we're not quite up to speed with having the secretary and the president come up with the agenda for the board meetings. He's kind of doing that on his own, and hey, I'm okay with that actually. But what you should be doing is talking to your president, coming up with the agenda. You might remind him of the action items from the previous meeting or previous meetings, so that he is aware of the work that was supposed to have been done, the work that needs to get done, and what's the status on it. So, and you're maintaining the files. So here's a task for you secretaries, and presidents and treasurers, nag them about it. Where are you keeping the files? You need a disaster recovery plan. And part of what the secretary does is keeping legal records. So they need to be part of your all hell breaks loose plan. And where do you have the files? And can somebody else get to them in the event of your untoward absence? So these are kind of the things that go on. As a membership chair responsibility, society youth policy, it's a bit of a nag. You have to do the spreadsheet and talk to the headquarters folks and find out who's had the training and who hasn't. Joe Cerruti is really big on this. And I must say, for our own experience, we have had a couple of members in the past underage. So the youth policy needs to be looked at and reviewed, and you bring it up to the board and you say, okay, guys, you got to go take this training, and you'll hear some grumbling about it. Just, keep nagging them gently, nicely. That's the best you can do, I think, really. Membership forms and application. I'd love to tell you guys I know all about them, but things seem to be in flux right now. One of the issues that we had in Cherry Hill was who gets the paper? Do they actually need the guy to sign it, and so forth? There's a little bit of uncertainty at least in my own mind, about the workflow around membership applications and how you handle that. So you secretaries out there, you're going to have to work on it and find out from membership at BHS or barbershop.org and see if things have been clarified a little bit since the last time I tried to do it. But celebrate them. When guys, you'll get a letter in the mail from the folks in Nashville, and it'll be it'll be a member's renewal card. Even in the times of Zoom meetings and virtual rehearsals, celebrate these guys. Tell the director, I need 5 minutes at the end, and we're going to celebrate this guy is actually re-enlisted in the society, and that's a good thing. Alrighty, so the rest of it there is on here's your business responsibilities, invoices, insurance, copyright compliance, and all that. So presidents and treasurers, your secretary is going to be looking for some money. A lot of times it is easier if the secretary has his own account on Harry Fox, so that when he finds the song that you guys are going to do and licenses, he can go ahead and pay for the darn thing right there on the spot. my chapter has said, you know, we need to have better control over that. So why don't you use the chapter's debit card? Well, okay, but it depends on what time of the day or week that I'm actually on Harry Fox Agency getting this done. It could be pretty late at night, and I really don't want to bother them. So that's something that you have to work out with the treasurer and the president to say, how are you going to do this? And is it okay for the secretary to go ahead and put it on his personal card and then send you the bill? Stuff to work for. All right, so you're the communications conduit between the triad, the executive triad, and the rest of the membership. They will come to you and ask you what's going on. And it's always best if you and the president and the treasurer are talking about the same things at the same time. You don't want to like put the other two guys in a bind because you're making a commitment to one of the members that isn't something that they wanted to do. Talk to each other. That's the biggest part about it. All right, so here's a kind of an annual schedule. This is an example. These are examples of what has to happen monthly as needed and whatnot. This is available on the website under Healthy Chapter Initiative. And for those of you who say, we got to have handouts from this, I'm pulling these from the society website. So that's where you get them. That's where you can get them. All right. I really don't have a whole lot else to say. And let me open it up to the rest of you guys. Anybody got anything to query me on, or what would you like to say? Anybody, anywhere?
We got a few questions on chat.
There's questions on chat. Thanks, Mike, for letting me know.
I have a question. Does the files have to be physical in a filing cabinet, or are they most conveniently put on a disk?
What do you think would last 10 years from now?
Good question. It depends on where the disk is.
Depends on what we read in. Anybody got an 8-track player?
Oh, golly. No.
Yeah, or a floppy drive. So that's kind of the conundrum. What do you do with the records and what form should they be in? We've wrestled with it. We actually have some of them in hard copy and some of them on a thumb drive. And it's in a fireproof box down in the admin room, which right now is not accessible to us. Being in the church basement, and the church is closed. So it
Hey, Richard?
Yeah.
I'm going to encourage people, depending on the technical savvy of the folks in their chapter, is to put them someplace up on like start a Google Drive account for your chapter, because I'm pretty willing to bet that Google's probably not going to go anywhere over the next 10 or 15 or 79 years.
Could be. Certainly hope so.
And this way you also have control over who's got access to it, but there's no single person, no single point of failure.
Yeah, that's true. They're supposed to maintain their data and multiple copies of it in whichever data centers they have. So that may be classified as a secure storage, I suppose.
May I make the point that Google has withdrawn some years ago support for their photographic program, and some of that has basically gone away. We still have to make sure that everything that we store is in a readable form, a usable form. That may require translation, shall we say, or modification, accepting a new piece of software or a new medium to store those records on.
Yeah, and we've wrestled with it. I don't think we have a good final solution for that, and it may be that, as you say, the solution has to change when the tech refreshes about every 5 years. I see there's a question here in chat about how you report a death in the chapter. Now, the society wants to send a letter of condolence to the next of kin. So you need to have a good address for that member. And even if they were a former member, you need to try to pin down a good address. The technique I use is to get the obituary out of the funeral home's website. So it's pretty official at that point. It's not like declaring somebody dead when they actually aren't, and you're not doing it by rumor or somebody called you and said, "Hey, I heard that so and so has passed." You're actually getting as close to the physical official death certificate as you can by going through the funeral home. And I just send a PDF of that into the headquarters folks, and they take care of it from there. Anything else?
What's your suggestion for storage in the future? A thumb drive?
Well, that'll work as long as it's readable by the future computers. And that begs the question: what is it going to be? I don't know. So we have a hybrid. We have hard copy and electronic.
Right. That's true. You definitely want to have that. And some things will always be paper, like your charter and things like that. So always there's going to be a need for a fireproof box somewhere that has certain files in it. I think that's always true. Richard, I know we had this question actually like a couple of years ago when I was doing this, and also in NED district last fall. So it's got to be a combination strategy. And Richard brings up a very good point. There are companies that went out of business because of the World Trade Tower disaster, and they didn't have backups of their files off-site. So there's a concept there as well. I used to be involved in backups and recovery. Backup is great, but recovery is even better, right, when you need it.
Right.
So just what Richard is saying is, just consider, it's probably not a challenge that we have today that you'll never be able to access your stuff, but make sure you got it in a couple places, a thumb drive and in Google Docs, and then refresh it, right? So Microsoft Word has been around for a while, right? So if it's a Word document, you'll probably be able to open it. Google Docs can open a Word document. There are other applications that can open and work with a Word document. So that seems to be ubiquitously available, but later on that could change. So if you have files that you need to keep that are beyond the storage date and disposal date, then consider changing them, right?
Yeah, the Word thing, if you go back far enough in time, you won't be able to read a document with Word, but there is a format called Rich Text File, RTF, and I think almost everybody who has a word processor can read those kind of files. Also, if you store it as a text file, it looks kind of like text, but almost everything can read that because that's actually on the character level is stored in a manner that is not encoded. It's actually just plain universal character encoding. Now we're getting into really geek territory here, so watch out.
Richard, can you address the question came up in the treasurer's session, but it's really more of a secretary's issue. Can you address the need to file an Ascap report this year, even if a chapter did not have any shows?
Yeah, it's one of the requirements. Now, why are we doing that? Ascap wants to know how many of us do shows. If you don't do a show, that's okay. This year, that's okay. But they just need to know that happened.
Thank you.
Richard's iPad is, you've had your hand up. You're right below me in the stack, so I'm not sure where you are.
Is there a duration that these files can be destroyed or disposed of? Like the IRS has 7 years or something like that? Or is there a mandate by the BHS that they must be maintained forever?
Yeah, there's a few files in that category. If you go onto the website and take a look at the business of barbershop, they have in there a retention time. Of course, one of the indefinite ones is chapter meeting minutes, treasurer's reports, your charter. These are documents that have to exist forever. The other one that caught my attention in that list was a listing of your charity work. We are supposed to be a nonprofit, and one of the criteria is a certain amount of charity work. And when the IRS comes calling, they want to know that. So that goes into your permanent storage. There's other records that you don't need to store that long. So there's a whole list of them. They break it down pretty good on the Business of Barbershop.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else? Okay, John Santoro, I think you're up next, sir.
Thank you, Richard. And thanks for everybody for coming to this session and going to your individual sessions as well. I am going to share my screen just very quickly. It will be only one slide, but I do want to talk about just some of the concepts of what the treasurer's role is, but also what the entire board. The board acts as a manner to govern the entire chapter, and the treasurer and secretary have specific roles to play in the chapter, but they're also members of the board, and they have the right and the responsibility to participate in all the discussions, as well as to take minutes and to present the financial status of the chapter. So you're a fully functioning voting member of the board. As Richard said, you can make motions, you can second motions, you can participate in the discussion, and I encourage every secretary and treasurer to do that, because the more people involved in the governing of the chapter, the better it is. In this year, or the past 10 months that we've been through, and some still undefined period of time, the pandemic has made life difficult for so many of us, on our barbershopper lives, on our personal lives, and everything. There are some chapters that are surviving quite well. They're meeting via Zoom. They're doing some virtual performances or re-airing past shows and things like that. There are others that are struggling. Some chapters have continuing obligations to pay, even though they're not meeting physically, and they may not have the resources if their members aren't renewing, for example. One of the things I'd encourage everybody on this call to do is to make sure that your chapter is keeping in contact with all of your members, whether you're meeting via Zoom, the people who don't show up to Zoom meetings, anything along those lines. Keep in contact with them. Let them know that you care about them. Let them know that you'll be there when the pandemic is over, and encourage them to renew their membership, because it's important for your chapter to have that income. It's important for the district to have the membership, and it's important to the society to know that there's still that level of interest in our hobby, and that we want to get back together again physically. So it's something that's really important, not necessarily a treasurer thing, but it's something that, as I'm speaking as a society board member at that particular moment, and it really is important for every level of our organization. So the treasurer's specific role, obviously the treasurer pays the bills of the chapter, and that is in conjunction with whatever approval policy that the chapter has, whether it's the president, whether it's the music VP or the secretary, whoever is in charge of specific areas. So it's an important element, but it's not the treasurer working on his own. It's another area of cooperation to make sure that the bills are presented on time, paid on time, and reconciled. Bank accounts are reconciled, for example. There is, the questions have been asked, is there a records retention policy? Yes, as Richard said, it's in the business of barbershop. It's also in the treasurer's manual. There's very specific recommendations based on the IRS recommendations on how long various records should be kept, anywhere from 1 year to 7 years to permanently, as Richard said. One of the things the treasurer does is see to the financial review of the chapter. And as I mention all the time to the treasurers, this is not an audit. It's not a particularly onerous process. But you do need someone who is not on the board, or at least was not on the board in the year that is under review, in this case 2020, and understands a bit about record keeping and possibly even bookkeeping. But the thing is that the financial review is just a sanity check for the chapter board to help understand that the treasurer is looking after the finances of the chapter in a proper and methodical way. It's very high level. It's not delving into specific transactions. It's not delving into the reasons why those transactions are occurring. It's just looking at whether they occurred, they were properly approved, whether they were budgeted properly, and recorded properly in the records of the chapter. So it's an important element of what the treasurer does in keeping the records in a way that facilitates the financial review. And that's something that the treasurer and the secretary and the president can work together on to make sure that that does happen. The treasurer obviously prepares and files the IRS 990 form and any 1099s that might be required for your director or quartets or organizations like that. Kathy. Sorry.
Yeah, if you are not
No.
speaking, can you please go on mute?
That was actually my wife.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Did you tell your wife to go on mute?
She unplugged her headphones for some reason. Sorry about that. So when the chapter engages a music director or a quartet for a show or any other situation where they pay more than $600 to a person or an organization that is not a corporation, they have to file a 1099 with the IRS on an annual basis. That needs to be done by the end of January. And there's actually a new 1099 form for that this year. We talked about that in the treasurer's class, and there was an email that went out to all chapter presidents and treasurers earlier this week that described that change in form and the procedure to file that 1099 non-employee compensation as opposed to the 1099 miscellaneous form that had been used up and through 2019. And there's also some guidance in there on how to file a 1099 electronically on some web services so that you don't have to try and hunt down the paper forms like we have in the past. I want to talk a little bit about the budgeting process for a chapter because there is a bit of misunderstanding in some chapters about the role of the treasurer in preparing a budget. The treasurer doesn't actually prepare a budget. The treasurer compiles a budget, and what that means is that the people who are responsible for the various functions of the chapter should be giving information to the treasurer, encouraged by the president, so that the treasurer can compile that information and then work with the president in setting priorities on what the income and expenses of the chapter will be in the budget for the coming year. If you leave that preparation process to the treasurer, your chapter is set up for failure because the treasurer doesn't automatically know how many pieces of music you're going to buy, whether you're going to compete, whether you're going to get outside coaches, whether even how many guest nights and things like that you're going to have. So all of that information needs to be provided to the treasurer, who then takes it in and presents it and works with the president to prioritize expenses, because we never have enough income for the money we want to spend. But that becomes a process of prioritization before you come to a proposed budget that is given to the board for approval. So that's the role of the treasurer in the budgeting process. And as I said, it's not the sole responsibility of the treasurer to prepare the budget. And finally, the treasurer is responsible for ensuring that the chapter is keeping track of the money that are called social funds and operating funds. The better term for this is actually restricted versus unrestricted funds. Restricted funds are funds that come from the general public, ticket sales, grants, anything that has to do with money that comes from non-members. The unrestricted or social funds are the members' payments, dues, payments for parties that may be happening, and things like that. And there are still rules on the unrestricted funds, but it's pretty clearly outlined in the Treasurer's Manual, and it's part of the process of the budget preparation and budget reconciliation that the Treasurer needs to be going through to make sure that you're staying on side with that and you're not spending restricted funds on social activities of the chapter. And that, other than reinforcing what I said at the very beginning about working as a team with the President and Secretary specifically, but the board in general, that is pretty much what I want to contribute to this session. And let me just take a quick look at the chat. State tax filings. It depends. There are no real state tax filings. The IRS 990 is a federal form. We are federally nonprofit organizations, so we are not required to file state annual reports or income tax forms for our organizations. However, there is a possibility, there are two possibilities for that, and treasurers need to be aware of this. First, if your chapter solicits donations, and that could be as simple as having a Donate Now button on your website, you probably, I know in many states in Mid-Atlantic District, I'm not sure if it's true in all, but in many states you need to register for a solicitation license with the state Secretary of State in your state, and it usually involves a fee, and it usually involves an annual, some type of annual reporting. It may be more trouble than it's worth. I found that to be the case in Maryland. But it is something to be aware of. You can't just put a Donate Now button with a link to PayPal or one of the organizations that manages donations and not attract the state scrutiny if you do that. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is if you have a state sales tax exemption for your chapter. And again, this varies by state. Some, it's particularly easy to get a sales tax exemption. I think Pennsylvania falls into that category. Other states, it's a bit more of a hurdle to get it. And sometimes it involves renewal. Sometimes it lasts for quite a while. The thing about sales tax exemptions is you have to really think about what are you going to use it for? What does your chapter buy that attracts sales tax? I mean, if you're about to buy a bunch of risers or new uniforms or a new truck to transport your risers, then it might be appropriate to look to have a sales tax exemption. But if you're buying office supplies and things like that, in the grand scheme of things, it may not be worth the time and effort to not only register for it, but to maintain it over the years. But again, that does depend to a certain extent on the individual state requirements for that. Yeah, the regulatory forms do overlap with the Secretary's duty, but for example, if the Secretary has to report on the incorporation status for a change in officers or a change in registered agent, there may be an annual fee required, and the Treasurer would be the one that prepares the check for the annual fee. So yes, there is overlap with that. Yes, the President appoints the person who will do the financial review, but the Treasurer should at least be involved in the assessment of whether that person is capable of performing the financial review. So it is, maybe my choice of words was not entirely appropriate there, but the President and the Treasurer should work together to ensure that the financial review is performed. Okay. New Jersey requires a financial review to retain our nonprofit status and costs over $2,000 a year. I am not aware of that, and I'd like to have a conversation probably with you, Rusty, offline about that, because that's the first I'm hearing about that.
I'm afraid not, John. I've spoken to you about this a couple of times at our other leadership meetings, and it kills me because both Rich Kavitsky, Matt Matthew, and everybody else I've talked to in our chapter says it is required to retain nonprofit status in New Jersey. If anybody can help me on this, I would appreciate it, because it's bleeding us.
Are you sure it's not related to the solicitation issue that I mentioned?
No, that's going to be a new one, because now we've been told, because we just added a donate button to our website, that we're going to have to ask for another thing. This is not going in the right direction for us, John.
If you can...
Rich Kavinsky, Matt Matthew, if I can put you in contact with them,
yeah, I'd like to see the paperwork.
I'd like to see the paperwork. I've been beating this horse for a while.
Loop me in on that too, please. Include me if you would, please.
Yeah, if you can
okay,
have
we'll
that,
do. Steve, John, I will send a note to you with the information that I've got.
One thing I can add real quickly, I used to do these charitable state registrations for a living. It's my experience, at least going back a few years when I was last involved, that there's a sliding scale. If you're really huge, you need a full-blown audit of your financial statements to get your charitable solicitation blessed. But if you're small,
we're calling it a financial audit, but we're calling it a financial review, but the damn thing runs about 50 pages.
I'd like to have a look at that offline.
Yeah, we do need to look into that.
Thank you, Steve.
That does not sound like it's not something that I'm experienced with, and it's quite actually it comes as a shock to me. So I will look into that, and thank you for Simon. Thank you for posting that reference. I will certainly look into that.
Posting what reference here? Well, hold on.
Simon posted a reference about the New Jersey statute.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. The chat line, is there any way that I can possibly forward this to the people that I'm talking about? That way I don't have to rephrase it.
Yes, you can save the chat. Let's see. So when you have the chat, it's on my other screen here. Just a minute. You can save it as a file, and then you can take all of the comments or part of them. It's down there with the 3 little dots on the bottom of the chat. And if you look, you can You should be able to, file.
I'm looking. But
File, save. No, it's right there. Dang it.
I'm looking.
Online. More, save to file. I guess
Chat.
for me, it doesn't show because I'm the host, and when I save this meeting, when we're finished with this meeting, it converts it and it actually saves it to a file for me. So if nothing else, Rusty, I'll send it to you, okay?
I would appreciate that because my dots don't seem to be doing the same thing yours are doing.
Mine either.
I'll take care of it for you.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Thanks. Tom Noble was asking if a 990N is still okay for small chapters. The answer is yes, as long as the chapter is under $50,000 gross receipts, and that's been covered. That's been in existence for quite a while now, and that's covered extensively in the Treasurer's course and in the Treasurer's manual. And that's an online form. It's not a paper form. It's very simple to fill out. If a member donates to the chapter, is that social or operating funds? The quick answer is it depends. If in the old days when it was relatively easy to take a charitable donation on your tax return as an itemized deduction, the answer would be that it is operating funds because the member is getting a benefit for that, and there shouldn't be a double benefit under IRS regulations for things like that. Now, since a lot of people don't ordinarily itemize their deductions, you can make an argument that it's still covered in the excess or the increased itemized standard deduction that people have, and the IRS would probably frown on considering it as an unrestricted or social funds for the chapter. So my recommendation is when members do donate to a chapter, and especially when the donation comes through a third party, such as Harmony Foundation or the Barbershop Harmony Society, that those funds be considered restricted. Any further questions? Did I cover everything in the chat?
Yes, Rich Kessman, I've got a question, sir.
Yes, Rich.
You mentioned the Treasurer's Manual. I am a newbie at this. How does one find that? And is there a manual for the President and also for the Secretary?
In the Document Center on the members only section of the Barbershop Harmony website, there's information for chapter treasurers and there's information for chapter secretaries, and both of those areas have links to the Treasurer's Manual and to the Secretary's Manual, respectively. I'm not aware that there's a President's Manual, but there is a chapter business guide that covers a lot of the organizational and day-to-day business activities of a chapter. So it's not necessarily a leadership manual, but it is an organizational approach. So that information is on the Barbershop Harmony website.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to know if there is new, for example, our chapter is considering replacing a trailer, which we have all of our records and what have you, and risers and everything else in it. Does this licensing and all that stuff get a tax, sales tax exemption, and should we file for it?
And again, that depends on your state. In some states that would apply. Dave Welter, I know Alexandria just purchased a truck not too long ago. Do you have some interesting information about Virginia on that?
Unmute.
Yeah, the shortcut didn't work. It's a complicated picture, and most of the time when we've looked into that, it's been not a winning proposition. Just pay the tax.
unfortunately, that seems to be the case in a lot of states. It's a real hurdle to get the exemption, and in some states to maintain it on an annual basis. I think you need to, in your, we have 8 states and the District of Columbia and Mid-Atlantic District, so we don't have the answer for every single jurisdiction. But in general, it can be difficult to get. I did see that says Pennsylvania sales tax exemption is one of the most difficult to qualify in. That's interesting because I thought I recall from the 2010 International Convention that the chapter that was hosting the convention, or the district, qualified for a sales tax exemption on a relatively easy process for all of the convention-related materials. So unless something's changed in 10 years, which it may well have.
John, that's news to me. That was the Bryn Mawr Mainliners who hosted the 2010 International. And I know for a fact that the Mainliners never had a sales tax exemption.
Really? Or maybe it was done through the district then.
Maybe.
But the district is not incorporated in Pennsylvania, so that's, again, my understanding of that is second-hand, third-hand, whatever. So
I also looked into at one point all the sales tax that's involved with hotel bills that are involved with conventions. That ran into 4 figures just of taxes, and we got the help of a chapter in Pennsylvania to technically host it and got us exempt from those taxes.
Oh, maybe that's what I was thinking of then. Yeah.
It was quite complicated.
Okay. Any other, I don't want to hold this up getting into too many gory details. I'm certainly available. My contact information is on the district websites, on the international websites, the back of the harmonizer, so you can easily get in touch with me. So unless somebody has a specific burning question at this point, I'll turn it back to Doug, because I think he has some thoughts that he wants to pitch in before Rob wraps things up.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Richard. I'd received a private request that we kind of talk about what's it going to take to be able to get people back singing again. And so one of the files that I shared with you through the chat function, I'm wearing 2 hats tonight. The second hat that I'm wearing is president of the Atlantic Harmony Brigade. And as a result of Harmony Brigades across the country, an old Mid-Atlantic guy by the name of Don Schreiber put together a committee. I'm just going to share screen here with you just for a second. And so Don put this committee together, and just to give you some kind of idea, George Korch, Dr. George Korch, is basically in charge of infectious disease control for a little organization called the U.S. Army, or he had. So the stuff that you see in here is not, hey, I was talking to my barber who knew a guy whose brother-in-law said that we ought to do blah, blah, blah. So it's recommendations that we're taking very seriously. Now, this was done, this report was issued right before January 1st, like order of magnitude December 27th. But that's a critical issue. I have asked for and received assurance from Don that this report will be reissued no less than every quarter, and it can be issued more frequently than that if we have a need for it. So I wanted to get this out to all of you. Again, there's some challenges that we have in brigades that the average chapter does not have. But one of the things that came out of a call with BHS representatives is the insurance carrier perspective across the board this year changed. And so please make sure that you're listening to what I'm about to tell you. That if we as chapters decide to do something, getting people back together, and if for whatever reason somebody ever would decide to sue the chapter for damages because they got COVID, the insurance carrier would cover the legal bills of defending that suit. It would not cover any award that is made to the person who is having the lawsuit against the chapter. So unless you guys have a lot bigger bank account than most organizations I'm aware of, that could basically bankrupt your organization. So it's like, so there was a couple of very strong recommendations in here. I put it out so that you could kind of read it and share it with your chapter members. I am planning on doing this with all the members of the Atlantic Harmony Brigade in another month or so, because that would start to impinge in terms of when we need to have a go, no-go decision. But just so you know, the group that Don put together, I told you about George Korch. Dr. Dale Bieber is a physician. Gary Holmes is a physician. Tamara Hitchcock is involved in medical practices. I mean, this really is a true brain trust of people in terms of doing that. But again, there's certainly not a lot to be stated and a lot of change that I would at least anticipate over the next 3 or 4 months in terms of as vaccines continue to roll out and across the country. But I do encourage you, there's a whole one of the things in here that he does mention, and I think this is really critical. Don't be bullied if it's not safe. Yep, guess what? I'm just as interested in trying to get back to Sing Live as we can. I'm doing some of that with Somerset Hills in terms of, you may have read about the Hot Rods in Harmony, or sometimes it's called Carber Shop, because we're showing up and singing with microphones that go into from our cars, that then go into a mixing board and get broadcast out from FM, and that's working pretty well. There's a free computer program called Jamulus that you can be listening to 4 parts coming into your ear. It's close to real time with minimum amount of delay. Is it perfect? No. But does it beat not singing together at all? Yeah. But I would encourage you to go ahead and download this document, read it through, and I would, if at the very least, I think you ought to share it with your other board members so that they can be a little bit knowledgeable. Yep, it's through the lens of Harmony Brigade, but there's an awful lot of overlap between Harmony Brigades and the way a chapter is operating. So Rusty,
I appreciate this very much.
Yeah.
What are you saying about how it's available to us?
well, yeah, it's, if you look in your chat function,
Oh,
you should, I put the document there so that you can download that onto your own computer.
Right, and so I've got a copy of it open right now, and I'm going to put it in the document place. I have a Google Drive which has all the session materials from Leadership Academies, and so all the sessions. And actually, it's several years. I've been building that for a few years. So that's going to be in the link from our Mid Atlantic District, page, the YouTube channel. Doug, can I put this up in your session, or would it be appropriate to put it somewhere else?
You can put it up. You can put it up any place you want, as long as I talked with Don, as long as we give credit to the fact that this document had come from the Association of Harmony Brigades.
All right, we'll find a way to record that attribution. I don't know if we can put it in the doc and that's good enough. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
that's, I'll figure that out. Good enough. We'll talk offline about that. Great information. And, I think it's important too. So Brigade, we know what Brigade is. I've done Brigade. And that's I guess, because of Brigade is kind of a super spreader potential, right? A kind of an event. You've got quartets mixing it all up. The whole goal is to mix it up with everyone else. And when you sing in a quartet, you want to be very close. And so that would be where you could have some serious concern. In a chapter meeting or a chapter, in a hallway or a bathroom and all that, that same potential exists. I mean, I got to just be honest with you. You know, when all of us get together again and we're in person and we want to sing, man, that temptation is really, really there, right? So as chapter leaders, I think I love what you just said, and I love having this info. We do have to be a bit diligent to protect our members and our chapter for its very survival, so we don't get caught really behind the 8 ball, unfortunately.
There was a question that talked about our officers protected from personal liability in such a suit. That probably needs to be answered by our insurance carrier as opposed to me throwing out an opinion, unless John or Richard can kind of speak to that specifically.
I think it's the same situation, that the legal fees would be covered as long as the officers and directors are not involved in illegal activities. But any award from losing such a legal suit would be the responsibility of the chapter. Now, having said that, the chapter's liability would not extend under almost all circumstances because you're a corporation. The chapter's liability would not run to the individual people unless the people were found to be, and I think the proper legal term is grossly negligent in performing their duties. So it is something to be aware of, but in the normal course of activities, as much as we can consider a pandemic and restarting our operations after a pandemic normal, if you're prudent in what you do and you're following guidelines that are provided by the society, by the district, by the Harmony Brigade Task Force, then your position as an officer and director should not attract personal liability for those types of decisions.
Right.
My first reaction would be, knowing that we have Dave Welter on as Mid-Atlantic Treasurer, to me, if Mid-Atlantic as a board made some recommendations to chapters about when they could and could not, or when they should or should not get together, and individual chapters said, well, thanks for the input, but that's not what we're going to do, and kind of flew in the face of that, to me, you'd be setting up for what John just talked about. It's like,
right,
we told you how to operate and you decided to say, tough noogies, I'm not doing that. That to me could potentially trigger an all bets are off situation.
And if I can interject, there's a concept here too. So what John just mentioned, you know, first of all, you say this, right? So none of us are lawyers. None of us are giving legal advice. None of us are
Steve
actually
Baker is.
In that kind of, well, none of us are in that role where we want to give that kind of legal advice, not on a call like this. It's all speculative, right? I'm going to share just one thing from my professional experience at Merck Pharmaceuticals. I work in the IT department, and we have what's called a good documentation practices kind of a concept. We have a good manufacturing GMP systems, GXP systems, if you know those terms. And here's the thing with our IT project, and we always say this, right? We go through this with like when we have a feature that we're developing, and then we're going to test it, and then we're going to deploy it for the end users, like let's say a signature on a change control, for instance, right? So if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And the extension is, if it's not written down and not legible, right, or not, not supportive, or not in GDP, good documentation, procedure format, then it's inadmissible. It's not what we're looking for, right? Why I say that is, I've noticed actually one thing that other organizations that do the Carver Shop thing do, right, is weekly or whenever they're going to get together, they actually have a survey that each of their members needs to fill out, answering questions. Have you been exposed? Have you, are you, waiting on test results? Do you feel like you have a fever? Are you sick? The whole idea of that, a certification by a person, which isn't really an e-sig, but it's at least a response that here's my information. So if we need to do contact tracing, we can. We have your cell phone number, we have your email number, very important. And then the answers, and they've got that as a history that they can demonstrate and show, for instance, and I don't know if it helps them legally or not, but at least they've got the history that they can show. It's written down. Look, we did our best faithful effort, put our best foot forward to ensure that we weren't allowing folks to come here who were sick, you know, that we knew were sick, right?
We've begun collecting that information. I would very much like to get a copy of that document, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get it. Is there any other way, Doug? Could I have your email address or something that I could?
Yeah, we can get that sent to you. That's
maybe put it in the chat. Yeah.
Which document? The document from the brigade? Ron?
What?
Ron, which document are you looking for?
I don't understand. I don't hear well.
I'm sorry. Which document are you asking for?
The one that showed considerations about reopening. It looked like a very...
That is in the chat. If you scroll back in the chat, that document is in the chat. I have to scroll back pretty far.
How do I print it out just because it's in chat?
There's an option, should be an option to open the file. So when you go back to that file, you should be able to find an option of open file. And then when you open the file, you should be able to print it from there. If you
It's
have
a box with a PDF. It says AXQHB reopen -2020 PDF.
Alternatively, I'm sure if Ron if you put your email in the chat, Ron, I'm sure Doug will email it to you directly.
Yeah, there you go. That also will work.
Good. Okay, sure. I'll do that.
Why don't you do that, Ron?
I'll do that.
Ron, I've also posted my my email in the chat for you. dbrown607@comcast.net. And that goes for anybody that needs anything up to and including the document that I opened the session with, by the way.
Rob, the concept you were discussing is called due diligence. That's actually the legal term for it. So.
All right, cool. Thank you. Appreciate that help. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV.
I don't either, but I've done a lot of copyright training over the years, and that is a legal term that's used in the legal realm in regard to copyright and liability. So
sure, and it's demonstrable.
Sure.
Yep.
At some point, I take it that we're going to have to record everyone that has been vaccinated so that we have that base covered. Is that incorporated in that form?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily been recorded in that form as of yet. I think that's more to come. It is one of those things I've already started to talk to Voices of Gotham about. That to the Secretary at Voices of Gotham. I think it's really going to be one of those things that while we're trying to stay on the side of the angels in terms of HIPAA law, I think just just kind of a simple, have you been vaccinated yet, is probably a reasonable accommodation if we're asking people to spend time in a room.
It's a little complicated. We've been giving some thought to that also, and there is the HIPAA angle, and there's also sort of, is it an invasion of privacy?
Right.
And what if are people all going to tell the truth? I hope so. And what if somebody has some medical reason for not taking the vaccine? Are you going to exclude them? So it's really quite complicated.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we deal with HIPAA law in the work I do because I'm a survey researcher. HIPAA information is in the hands of medical providers or doctors' offices. If I ask a person about a health condition, if I ask Rob, hey, have you ever had cancer? His answer is not covered by HIPAA. I don't have to protect that information because I'm not his doctor. We're not covered entities under HIPAA. So you can ask that. I mean, the privacy issue, the truthfulness issue, those are issues to ask for. But here, most people get a form. You could say, "Hey, show me your form," and you could make that a requirement to be in the performance. I think you could do it.
Thank you. That's very helpful to know.
But I'm not a lawyer.
I seem to have seen in the news recently that they are going to be issuing certificates of proof of vaccination in order to have people travel on public transportation.
Mm.
Sounds like what it takes to get a kid into school.
Well, I think if they have that, that'd be a good thing to ask for.
Right.
People have shown the little cards that they get on vaccination on screen. That may be the documentation that's needed.
Yeah, those are registered with the local health departments or whomever you're getting your vaccine through. That's all supposed to be reported to your state health department, which then in turn gets reported to the national registry. So to theoretically, because the question came up, what if I lose my card, that kind of thing, and it's all supposed to go in a national registry at some point. So, but like everything else, you know, I wouldn't expect it to happen overnight. So
You might also find yourself in a situation where if you have 80% of your members have been vaccinated and are willing to tell you that, and the other 20% don't want the vaccine but are willing to sign a waiver, then that might be another way. There are lots of ways to jump through this hoop, and we're just all starting to think about it. We need a lot more data about who's been vaccinated, how well is the vaccine working, and what's the current infection rate at the time. So we really need a lot more information before we make these decisions.
And if I could just point out, if the information does go into that state registry, that means you and I can't get it because it is covered by HIPAA. It would only be able to get it if the individual then signed a release for them to give it to you. So you'd have to get it directly from the person. You can't go through the registry.
Right.
Exactly.
I heard a recommendation that you should get a copy from your health provider that you got the COVID shot. Or like on your health provider's website or some sort of paper document as a backup.
If I could add something in here, there's a lot of chatter about the vaccine, and some people are beginning to forget that the vaccine will not prevent you from getting COVID. It simply prevents you from dying from it. So the need for having the vaccine, I mean, this is all great and wonderful. It does not prevent you from getting COVID. That's something that I think people are glossing over. They're saying, hey, we have a vaccine. This is a wonderful thing. Yes, but there is limits to what the vaccine can do for you. It will not prevent you from getting COVID. It will help prevent you from dying from it. So that it's like the flu. You get a flu vaccine, you can still get the flu, but it won't be as bad. And that's how this is going to work.
All right. So we actually have this scheduled till 9:30, so for another hour. I'm not sure there's any other content. So I'll let everyone call it if you want. Is there anything else that we need to consider? Anyone else have anything to bring up while we're assembled?
I have one question for John Santor, if he chooses to answer. If John's aware if there's any schedules to when Barbershop Harm Society as an organization is going to issue recommendations or considerations for chapters when to consider before they go back in live performance or live practice, I should say.
That's a topic that's constantly being reassessed at headquarters. There is a task force that's looking into that of district leaders, contest and judging people, society staff, as well as the University of Colorado and another university that led a public group that is getting together about the dangers of singing together as groups, and the Choral Directors Association and Sweet Adelines and many singing organizations are part of that ongoing effort, and they're meeting once a month to come up with revised information and then allowing the organizations to make recommendations. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that the society can only make recommendations. The society doesn't control what chapters and districts do in terms of performances or rehearsals or anything like that. So we can make recommendations in terms of what is a best practice at this particular moment in time, but it is the individual chapters and districts that will be making their decisions based on what's happening. And quite frankly, there are some chapters in the society that are back physically meeting, not based on any recommendation that the society's made, but they just feel that they're comfortable doing that. So it is, it's something that is constantly being assessed through the society with outside organizations that are essentially similar to the task force that Doug is talking about with the Harmony Brigades.
I see Rusty has his hand up.
Yeah, this is the sort of discussion that I hope we will be able to get into tonight, because obviously it's very important to all our members and everybody who sings. Our board has discussed it, as has the membership many times. And I think the baseline is that we will not be meeting until we can meet according to all the established rules of state, CDC, everything that's published. That is the lowest bar. Now, at that bar, we're probably still not going to meet, because we want to have enough people who are comfortable under these things to meet at socially distanced places, maybe with masks, maybe in a parking lot. Yeah, we're doing the Hot Rods and Harmony right now, which is very cool, and we feel very safe in doing that. But to get together to sing as a group, we're going to have to find a way that we are all comfortable after following all the rules. Now, unfortunately, when that happens, some people are going to say, yeah, I'm ready to go. And we've got a lot of people right now who are basically comfortable in singing under controlled circumstances. A lot of us are not. I'd say most of us are not. So our goal is to be able to meet together with sufficient people who are comfortable singing at socially safe, distant places, maybe in a big hall, and then we will meet together personally. How do the other chapters look at this kind of like phase in? And one of the important things to remember is we cannot leave members behind. We cannot say, we're all meeting, why aren't you here? It's a challenge. I'd like to hear some other guys' thoughts, because we're struggling with it.
Simon, why don't you go ahead and take yourself off mute?
Yep.
You want to go ahead and kind of share your comment from the chat?
Rusty, I was going to echo, I think, what you said. I think it's important, probably as a leadership team, that we find that we do our best to accommodate the interest of all members. And I think it's pretty clear that there are a group of people, it may not be a big group, but it's a significant group that probably want to sing now or very soon. And equally, there's another group, probably a larger group and a significant group as well, that doesn't want to sing until much, much later, probably until all the conditions that you just laid out are met. And I think it's incumbent upon this group representing leadership to figure out how to accommodate the interests of both those groups and keep them all on board. And I think it's very, very difficult. I really applaud Hunterdon and Somerset Hills for what you guys have done, because I think you've innovated and provided different ways for people to sing in different ways safely. But I don't see every other chapter doing that, and frankly, it worries me.
I think this is personal opinion. This ought to have the word commentary. For you guys that are old enough to remember that on a TV screen, this ought to have the word commentary across my chest here. I do agree with where Simon's coming from. I think as chapter leaders, we're held to a higher standard than just the feet on the risers. And if there's a group of feet on the risers that say, we'd like to get together and sing, you know what, as individual human beings, they certainly have the right to put themselves in whatever high risk position they choose to. But I think if we think about our job is to protect the entity called the chapter. And so that's where the whole idea of don't let somebody bully you into doing things that are really not the right thing. And I realize that right can be open to whose definition. But I think don't let somebody bully you into something that you're not comfortable. You got elected as an officer for a reason. It's not always the easiest way to go, but I think between Richard and John both talked about the fact that, hey, as the executive board or as members of the board, we've got an obligation. They're not always easy, but that's what kind of we signed up to, and we decided we were going to lead this parade, you know, for a year or 7. And so I think that's I really want to emphasize that. You know, can you suggest things like Jamulus that are low risk, no risk? Sure. Can you work with people and I know Rob had to step away, but there's tremendous amount of resources in terms of trying to do things like the Hot Rods and Harmony or the Carmony pieces to be able to make this thing safe. I would say don't give up the ship unless you've pursued all that you can really pursue that says, am I making this as safe as reasonable possible? Tom from Centerville talked about the, you know, kind of when a quartet get together when everybody's had a vaccination. You know, a quartet, it kind of operates as their own, kind of their own entity. Even if we said yes, no, or indifferent, they could go, thanks for the input, and they can do what they want to do. The question is, how much are we going to encourage people to do things that kind of fly in the face of state or local or CDC recommendations? And the last thing that I'm willing to be able to do is put myself into, yeah, well, Doug told me to do it. I am not going there. I am just not. The risk is way too high, and God forbid somebody guesses wrong. That truly is not something that I would want to live with for the rest of my life.
I'd like to emphasize that a little bit, Doug, because what you say is exactly right. And what Simon says is right also. People who want to sing, they ought to be able to sing. The real question is if the chorus leadership endorses, sponsors, or underwrites those people who are engaging in what some of us might still think is high-risk behavior, then we would be exposed and the chorus would be exposed. So I think we can tell those people that if they want to sing, you know, that's up to them, but we're not going to rent the hall for them. We're not going to schedule for them. We're not going to put it on our calendar. It's entirely up to them. That's where I am on that. But, you know, people want to sing, let them sing.
I think what you just said, Jay, is kind of falls into culpability, right, Jay?
Oh yeah, and it's you know, you can do all the due diligence you want, but if once you step over that line and accept that responsibility, it's all on you. So you know, it's and I've put my foot. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, we have a young director who has worked in a job with the public throughout the entire thing. He would be happy to get together tomorrow. And frankly, I've said, no, it's not going to happen. Even the chapter will not sanction, and that's the term you can use. I mean, we will not sanction an activity that's going to put our members at risk. So, and that's really what it comes down to, because later on, we're going to have to get into the nitty-gritty details of, you know, due diligence and how, you know, how do you prove that somebody's been tested and vaccinated, and, you know, and that's all going to come down the pike. And I think we're all kind of, you know, as Doug said earlier, and Rob said that, you know, that the documents are out there. John was talking about it too. The documents have been out there talking about chapter rehearsals. I think those original documents were done early last fall about what a chapter rehearsal might look like, but you know, until I think people are safe and understand that they can get back together, and it, you know, as Richard said earlier, I mean, it's, you know, it's like a flu shot. I mean, even if you're going to get vaccine, you know, it doesn't mean you're not going to get sick. So, so who's willing to take that risk, I guess? And, you know, I look at it from the perspective of having an 84-year-old mom who lives by herself and lives on her own. And I'm taking her Wednesday morning to get a vaccine. And I mean, I'm thrilled to death, but you know, what I said to her was, you do understand that this is like a flu shot, you know, even if you get it, it doesn't mean that you still have to wear a mask. You still have to do everything else until we reach a point where we've achieved herd immunity. So, and there was one of the groups yesterday, I think there was a session with Johns Hopkins yesterday on herd immunity. So, you know, what we're going to have to do as a country. And, you know, our new president said it's going to get worse before it gets better, guys. So I think we just, you know, you have to dig in, I think, as a chapter leader and say, you know, plan the best we can, try to make things work the best we can. So.
Thanks. I see Mike Thornton had a question, and then Simon has a district question for Dave Welter.
Yeah, regarding the one to go back to practice type thing, I've told the board that I see as part of responsibility to protect members from themselves, that we have to make the hard decision to say no until it is safe. And Jay was talking about his 84-year-old mom, whatever. We have like 3 members who are over 80. Like one of them's gung ho, and he has a wife at home who is disabled, and it's, you know, it's like, you know, we gotta, you know, I don't tell him this, but I mean, just overall from a higher perspective, we have to maintain our priorities. In terms of specifics, our practice hall is in a nursery in a church. It's in a block. The ventilation are like 2 or 3 window air conditioners. There's no outside air coming in. So we have gotten permission from the church that when we do go back, that we could practice in the actual church pews, you know, which has a ceiling of like 25, 30 feet, and presumably circulation's better. My inclination is try to get actual tests done on both air exchange in both locations and things of that nature. So just some ideas out there. And then just one last thing that came up, I didn't want to interrupt before. My homeowners covers me for $10,000 for charitable work. So that's something you may want to look at, or, you know, get a rider. I probably won't go up beyond that, but it's the same exclusion. You know, if you're committing a crime, it won't cover, but it would be some additional benefit.
Let me turn that over, and I am going to post one other thing that talked about something that I had posted back in December on a different forum that I'm a member of. In the meantime, Simon, if you'll go ahead and ask Dave Welter your question.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for answering the question in the chat before. So I take it that any discussion about district grants that we may apply to will be taken up at a board meeting soon. My other question was, where does the district stand in thinking about refunding to chapters or to individuals dues that they paid to the district?
Yeah, I think I'll bring that up at the board meeting too. It's certainly a topic worth looking at.
Has it been looked at all over the last 11 or 12 months?
Yes, early on it was looked at, and at that time, with sort of projections being that this would resolve before the end of the year.
Yeah,
it wasn't worth pursuing. You have to recognize a dues change. This is different than a refund, and I understand, and that's part of what I can address later with the board. The process of dues change, there's a bit of a lag to get it to start, and then you don't really notice it for a while. So in terms of a revenue impact to the district, it's not like you wanted to raise dues, same thing. You're not going to get an immediate benefit. It's going to accumulate over the next 12 months. And then how do you make it fair if it was a shorter period of time? Oh yeah, but I didn't renew during that period. So, what are you going to do for me? So there's lots of little subtleties there, but yeah, that will certainly be addressed in the next meeting.
You know, balancing that, of course, as I'm sure you're aware, individual chapters, we've lost several members already this year who just can't afford to pay their dues. And we've given them a break and we've said, don't worry about the money, just come to the rehearsal and we'll figure everything out later. But it's certainly responsible for several of our members not showing up, number one. You know, number two, we're still paying our director and we're carrying that expense. So our overall P&L has looked very, very unhealthy for the last 12 months. We've offset it somewhat through fundraising. I don't know what the district's P&L looks like, but my suspicion is a lot of the activities that the district carries out actually haven't been happening. So if there is, it seems to me, at least looking from the outside in, and obviously I don't know all the puts and takes, but it seems to me that perhaps some of the chapters are carrying a lot of the water, but if there's an imbalance there, it would be nice to see it corrected.
And that's part of what we would be looking at for a 2021 budget. The 2020 was a very positive year for the district, mostly because activities that would have been losses didn't happen. And part of the discussion of the dues at that time was, well, maybe we should reduce it. But a lot of what happened in 2020 was just recovering from the large losses of 2019. So we're kind of back to neutral at this point.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me just to raise this in this forum, and appreciate the consideration and the discussion that you guys will have at the board meeting.
Right, and yes, it will be an interesting conversation. And as is, 21 is going to be an interesting year. So, ancient curse, right? May you live in interesting times.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
I put something, go ahead, Edward.
Just got a question. I put on my calendar another meeting like this coming up this next weekend, Friday or Saturday. Was that a mistake of mine, or is that a duplication of this or a continuation?
Nothing that's on my calendar. You're not planning on having an early Super Bowl party, are you?
No. No.
There's nothing that I'm aware of that we would have. Rob, is there anything on your calendar as well?
Nope. This is the final Zoom session for Leadership Academy. So
thank you.
Yep. There will be different things later, but not.
I put the link in, and then I got some feedback that the link may have moved, or it may not have been that visible. What I can do is I can do a quick screen share. This was the thing that had my attention. Let me get this out of your way. The thing that had my attention was this happened to be in Korea back in December, but it talked about kind of airflow, and this was the restaurant that people were sitting in. And because what you see here with these arrows, that's a traditional air handling unit that comes out and sends air 4 different directions, which is very, very typical, in a smaller space. And it was just showing how it was picking things up, where the airflows were bouncing off of walls and so on. Again, I'm not trying to create any kind of panic, situation here, but I do think we have to say forewarned is forearmed, and the more we know about situations like this or the possibilities, because we're in a big room may not matter as much as, take this with a grain of salt, please, the size of a softball. Just because we're in a large room may not matter as much of what direction is the air being, is the air circulating through that room. So again, if you happen to have somebody in your chapter that's an HVAC guy and really knows this stuff like the back of their hand, that's one thing. You know, putting ourselves in a spot where people are kind of conjecturing about, oh, this is probably what's happening, when they don't really know and they're making stuff up. My question is, how much risk do we want to put ourselves in?
This looks like a diagram of another indoor dining situation, excuse me, that was shown quite a number of months ago, very much like this, confirming transmission through the air in an enclosed and air-conditioned space.
Well, yeah, and the piece that's missing in all of this is they call it an air-conditioned space, and that's true, it is, but that air is recirculated. You need a system that absolutely draws in from the outside,
right,
and blows the space out. You need a air exchange of many times higher than what is in most facilities. Most facilities are closed systems pretty much, with maybe 10% of air exchange. You need something that's 100% air exchange and gets it out of there.
The other interesting point, probably, I'm going to guess, it's conjecture, that another good legal term I remember now, is that these people were probably not singing with force, I would probably guess.
Well, these guys were eating dinner.
Eating dinner. That's what I'm saying. So, but we like to sing with force, right? So, support. Right?
Yeah, the epidemiological studies, the ones you mentioned earlier, being done with Colorado State. The other partner in that is here at the University of Maryland. And the epidemiologist on that is he was the lead on Legionnaire's disease. He actually was the person that put all of that together back in the late 70s. So, and that's what and during those meetings, they've talked a lot about air exchange and what would need to be done in facilities to, and that's why, quite frankly, why facilities have just closed down. I mean, it's why you see churches and church halls, and it's untenable to be able to afford that kind of to put in that kind of a system, or to upgrade a system in order to do a full air exchange. And they're dealing with that with the schools now, the pushback with the schools, with reopening schools. I know here in the state of Maryland is not only vaccines, but the fact that we're dealing with a lot of old school buildings, and quite frankly, they're not on a good day, they breed all kinds of nasty things. I taught in an elementary school for the good part of 15 years. So I know what kind of nasty things get spread around elementary schools. So yeah, and certainly I'm sure the air handling system didn't help any of that. So
there's caution, and it's important to do your due diligence. Thank you, and to be cautious, right? So we have to consider that. And in Doug's presentation, we actually covered, what does it take to get back. It was a nice hour long plus session, and one of the things that I picked up from that, those who were there remember, the most important thing we can do is when it is safe, or when we do feel it's safe, and when we do begin to try to sing again, it's important to, and we may have covered it here too, that we don't pressure people, that we provide a way to include by, creatively using Zoom, or creatively using like something like a Carver Shop or other technologies or whatever, some way that we can still have them feel included, but not feel pressured to come and to sing and put themselves at risk or their family members at risk. So that was a great segment that would be well worth, going and watching that again if you haven't.
Richard, go ahead.
I don't know, we're close to the end, but thanks for all of you gents for putting this together. I'm a newbie. This is the first time attenders from me, how are we recording the attendance at this particular learning session?
I have a list of all the participants, so yeah. Why is that? Does that matter?
Well, I don't know if my chapter needs to know that I was here.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, good. Thank you for that. Yeah.
If you need a note for your teacher, Rob will write you one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Signed Mickey Mouse. No,
a quick screenshot would do good.
There you go.
Exactly. John Santoro, do you have any final comments?
No, I'll just say that if there are any other issues or things that come up that weren't addressed tonight, as I said, you have my contact information in a number of different spots. Reach out either by email or phone. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Super. Richard, anything else from the secretary spot that you want to make any final pushes on?
Probably not. I don't see where the material that I covered is overlapped all over the place. Rob knows how to get hold of me if anybody needs something and they think I can provide an answer. My first question is, why do you think I can provide an answer? But Rob knows how to get hold of me. Just a side note, Cherry Hill is actually going to try this drive-in sing. I'm also the technical guy for the chorus, and there's equipment challenges, and we're going to work them out. I think our director is finally on board that it's actually a viable thing to do, but now we got to show him. So we have to actually put something together and do it, and then I think he'll be a little more comfortable with what we're doing. So
well, you
I
can
will pray for you, my brother.
You can always invite. You can always invite him up to Somerset Hills or Hunterdon.
That's right.
Let him see with his own eyes and listen with his own ears.
Well, yeah, okay. It was.
It's only an hour away.
No, he's in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay, so it's an hour and 40 minutes away.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Tell him to bring a blue hen when he comes, right?
Exactly. Well, I guess on behalf of Mr. Santoro and Richard and myself, I guess I'm going to leave us with that line from the song, "We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when." But I'm looking forward to ringing some chords. Thank you for sharing part of your evening. Thank you for the amount of activity that we had in the chat trying to get questions up. It was my pleasure to be able to share what little bit of stuff that I could share with you. You have my email. You reach out with questions, and we'll kind of go from there. Rusty, is that a you saying goodbye, or is that a
that is a super thanks to Rob France.
Oh, thank you.
He's been on 8 of these damn things. Superman.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you, Rusty. And I wanted to thank John, Doug, and Richard for their yeoman's duty on pulling this together. So thank you very much for your wisdom, guys. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We'll see you again sometime.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye. Thanks, Rusty.